Well, welcome. I'm here this afternoon with Juliet Funt, and Juliet is the CEO of WhiteSpace at Work. And we're together here at the Servant Leadership Conference 2017, which we've named the music of servant leadership. And so what Julia does is really one element of bringing that music out into the light and building more effective teams. So to get us started, Juliet, would you tell us a little bit about WhiteSpace?
Sure. So the concept and then the company, as you asked. So the concept of WhiteSpace is that in a certain kind of culture, there is permission for thoughtfulness. There's permission for the gaps where people can be strategic and introspective and thoughtful, and we call that a white space culture. We actually define those little pauses as the white space. We call them strategic pauses taken between activities. And what we find is that in a business or an organization where people have a different pace and cadence, where they're used to little tiny sips of time to reorient, to think, to recuperate, that everything flows better and differently in the workday than in our traditional activity, frenzied, back-to-back environment. And so our work at WhiteSpace at Work is to take corporations or groups or teams that are drowning in low-value junk, like emails and meetings and decks and reports and forms and fire drills, and to help them learn how to reduce all of that in favor of finding at the end more of this white space, more time to simply have oxygen in the system that can then feed the fire of everything else that they're working on.
So they're finding more time to be thoughtful and reflective.
Yes.
That is really similar to something we talk about in our training at the Institute, which is the teaspoon approach.
Tell me about that.
Giving this teaching, but doing it in little bits at a time so that people can more easily make it a part of who they are.
Right, and it also, behavior change works better when it's a little bit over time. If you go to a 3-day seminar to change your life, odds are that 2 days later you'll be back to your regular patterns. But if you listen to a 2-minute something every morning, you might slowly, I think that teaspoon effect is something that I believe in a lot, although I didn't have language for it. Our similarity there is that we do believe in slow changes, because these problems of busyness and overload took a very long time to cook. And they take a very long time to unwind. What happens a lot is that people want to just do something. They want to throw in some sort of random intervention. And so they see their people are too busy and they start saying, well, we should do no meeting Wednesdays, and that's going to solve everything.
I remember that.
You know, and then you probably remember it comically because it probably failed, and then all you have left over is that everybody makes fun of no meeting Wednesdays because those small interventions thrown into an old, antiquated problem that took a long time to cook don't last. We like better what you described, which is to change it a little bit at a time and just keep nudging the mindset forward.
That's great. The reason that I laughed was I can actually remember that we decided, you know, in a management team that I was part of, that we would try this. We would pick one day a week with no meetings. And so I took it upon myself to be the one who figured out what day that was supposed to be. Well, you can imagine.
Oh my God.
I had like 30 different responses of what day would work.
Right.
And it just completely
And in the more macro version of that conversation, the whole concept of that is it's a skill set without a mindset. So you haven't addressed anything about why do we do this? Why are we so casual about wasted time? Why are we so complicit in this problem? All you've done is said, you know, let's move the cup 4 inches to the left. But you've done that completely in the absence of talking about philosophy, mindset, culture, other choices. And that's why the cup goes back really fast. And so we're very mindset focused. People are always assaulting us for, please give me tips for my inbox and we won't go there as fast as they want, because you have to start with the mindset.
So the emphasis is really on productivity rather than let's just reduce.
So we say creativity, productivity, and engagement are the 3 places where if you move from busyness and low value activity to thoughtfulness and high value activity, you'll benefit. Creativity, of course, needs time to blossom and cook and play and have ideas kind of grace you with their presence in their own time frame. And productivity, you need to be freed of that junk. And so there's a lot of different benefits to the work. And the time is not only for introspection or thoughtfulness. Sometimes WhiteSpace is used for really rich thinking about business strategy or a creative problem or something interpersonal or pondering one's own ethics. There are inner and outer applications of that time. What we like to say is there's the recuperative and the constructive.
Oh,
the
interesting.
recuperative is sometimes you just need to go, I need some space to just, and your body and your system to reboot,
Right.
like an Olympian who takes a pause between sets. But the constructive has an enormous breadth, and that's where all that other stuff comes in: strategy, creativity, thinking about one's own contribution, thinking about how to become. Ken is in the other room right now, Ken Blanchard, talking about you got to start with you, becoming a different kind of human before you become a different kind of leader. You can't have that thought while you're multitasking. You can't have that thought while you're running through a hallway. You can only have that thought in a moment of white space.
Right. So what is the biggest barrier when you talk to an organization? What is the biggest barrier you face in trying to help them understand this change in mindset?
It's, I'll tell you, it's been a challenging road since we actually took the content and birthed the real training and consultancy company. I'll be very transparent to say the thinking is ahead of what's out there. So what's normative, what's habitual for 9 out of 10 large companies or mid-sized companies is not this. So that's one of our biggest barriers. Is we're kind of like the guy who invented BPA-free plastic before anybody cared about BPA. So we're sort of waiting for, things to catch up a little bit. And so that's part of it. The other big obstacle is the leader who is the source of the problem. So for instance, you can have 600 people come to me one at a time from a department or division saying, we're drowning in low-value junk. Please help us. And I say, I have tools, I have tips, I have products, I have everything, but I can't flip the switch with a leader who doesn't believe in the culture change. And that's, interestingly, there's so much content dovetailing back and forth today, but if you have that slave driver, work them till they bleed mentality at the helm, and they're gonna send their emails on Sunday afternoon no matter what, you almost have to say, we're just gonna back out of this conversation. And so I have yet to find a magical way to equip someone with their own portable white space bubble that they can create this on their own, because it is so cultural and it is so communal, and it's about what we agree to mutually as a team and a group. And I think I gave you about 3 problems there, but there's it's been a process.
Okay. Yeah, no, I understand. And what strikes me is how similar it is actually to the work we do.
I bet.
In servant leadership. I mean, it's just incredibly close to what we try to do.
Well, it's evolved. So anything that is evolved, you guys are doing stuff that's evolved, we're doing stuff that's evolved. By definition, we're ahead of where these dinosaurs are, who are very comfortable ripping off the flesh of their smaller dinosaurs and living the way they want to live. And
it's a lot easier for them. It's a lot easier to say to somebody,
probably,
here's the job, now be quiet and go do the job.
Right. That's
what you're getting paid for.
Right.
That's a whole lot easier.
I would imagine that.
And answer the email on Sunday, gosh darn it.
Yeah.
Because I sent it to you, and that's what you should do.
Right.
So when I say the word servant leadership to you, what comes to your mind?
I was just thinking about this morning because I'm fairly new to your world, so I'm just going by the definitional impact of the word. But it's a sense of thinking of others first, a sense of being open to look at one's own blind spots. And I think the humility piece kind of comes through even if you haven't had any of the formal training. In terms of learning all your sections and quadrants and teachings, I haven't gotten there yet. Right. But I think that this idea of for the good of all kind of bleeds through just from the language.
Yeah, what comes to my mind is that in both of our work, we're really trying to create, I know this sounds grandiose, but it's trying to create a new world and a different way of
It is not grandiose. Yes, it's exactly right. The business world needs an enormous overhauling in compassion and ethics and humanity and sanity and what is maybe similar, and I haven't talked to you about this yet, is that the only way that we get to do all of that work is to Trojan horse it in through other claimed benefits. So for us, we spend an enormous amount of time dollarizing and quantifying for leaders the cost of their company's overload. Here's the money you're wasting: 20 million annually, 60 million annually, 100 million in just junk, FYI, CC emails and interruptions. And because we have to go in through the doorway of quantification, and then we get to buy a ticket. And when we buy a ticket, then later we get to Trojan horse in the things that are deepest for our heart about consideration and a work environment where people feel like they're supported and they can go home on time and all those wonderful things, but it's not usually what gets a contract signed in the real world. And so that's what we've found, is you have to kind of sneak it in.
Yes. Well, interestingly enough, one of the biggest challenges we had was the word servant.
Oh.
And when, say, oh gosh, maybe 5-6 years ago, you would meet a lot of potential clients who didn't want to use that word for it.
Well, isn't that a very old biblical
set
piece of language?
And folks don't know that, how powerful the servant was in the household. Because the steward, the servant, really ran everything.
Right, interesting.
So what we found was people wanted to use other terms rather than
maybe you could call it
leader.
big shot leadership. Maybe that would be more appealing.
But what we're finding is it's shifting now.
Oh, interesting.
And one of the things, people aren't so frightened of it any longer. And Art uses a great phrase for it. He says, I like the word servant because it implies action. And it is about action. It's about the leader inspiring and equipping the people that he influences.
You know, and another thing that kind of strikes me is I feel lucky every single day that somehow through the happenstance of my life, I ended up being someone who owns a company. And there are 1,000 benefits to my life that I don't even think about. And so I have so much gratitude that a sense of being able to give back all the time, I think would be a natural orientation for someone who's ever lucky enough to wake up in the morning and say, oh my gosh, look, I'm a leader of a group of people. It's the rare happenstance in the planet that's what you do for a living every day. And so I think that there's a piece of that too, in terms of just the giving back for the luck of where you ended up.
Right, and being able to see the impact of what your work does is just super important. Very, very, very gratifying. So what's your biggest challenge in being a leader?
Well, that gets into that wonderful personal stuff that Ken was talking about. You know, I think that my own normal personality limitations are the hardest thing. I find the work enthralling. I dig in hard. I'm very creative. I love making new relationships. It's when I notice that I'm interrupting my executive assistant at the end of every sentence, or when I notice that I can't seem to find the line between I'm doing this so perfect that it'll be high quality versus I'm doing it so perfect that it's crushing the project, or you know, those personal frailties I think are the hardest. And when you are on the speaker side, which I spend about 25% of my time in the keynote side, I've been doing that for 17 years.
Wow.
There's an awful lot of unhealthy slopes that you can slide down, slippery slopes of making it all about you, because you're in front of, I just agreed to go to Germany to speak for 10,000 people in this giant, amazing Olympic dome, and you can walk in and they give you the microphone and you can trick yourself into thinking that it's about you. And so the speaker side is very slippery. And I think that's why there's so many speakers that turn into some, not all wonderful people, but there is a subset of jerkiness that kind of infiltrates our population. It's tricky. And so to keep saying and remembering, like they were talking about earlier, that you're just the guide, that you're just the orchestrator, that you're lucky to be in that position. I think that probably ego, like everything else, is one of the biggest challenges. Like in everything else, becomes one of the biggest challenges.
Sure, yeah.
Especially when you have a personality-driven brand, where you're all over the place in the brand.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the thing that you're most passionate about now. Maybe it's something in the business itself that you'd like to share with us.
Easy, because we were just talking about it 2 minutes ago. the horrible cycle of people being too busy to become less busy is something that creates so much pain for me. And originally it was a business goal of how can we get more people to participate in our work. And then it became a humanitarian role when we went in and saw how deeply miserable people are in this grinding, endless lifestyle of I work all day, I go home, I put my kids to bed, I work again at 11 o'clock, I sleep with my phone on my pillow, I check email in the shower at 5 a.m., I go to work, and they never break out of it. And it's a miserable way to tick off the hours of your life. So what we're passionate about is we've created a digital product that allows people to de-busify themselves in very small teaspoonfuls, very small bite-sized chunks. We call it the WhiteSpace Digital Learning System. But it's a way that people anywhere, any place, anytime, globally, can engage in our content and become less busy. And we've been working for a very long time to find something that would be so lightweight that it could slip into the corners of someone's day where they're just determined to say that they don't have time, but we're going to convince them that they do. And so the digital learning is really where my heart is. It's why we're going to Europe. We're publicizing it all over the world. And it's also a nimble, easy way for people to learn. It's fun, it's light, and that's where almost 100% of my energy is right now.
Yeah, well, I can see the passion in you when you talk about it.
Yes.
And the way I look at it anyway is this is really part of serving other people to give them offerings like this.
Yes.
Robert Greenleaf, I don't know if you're familiar with him or not since you're just beginning your exposure to servant leadership, did his writings in the 70s, was an executive at AT&T, and he started talking about servant leadership and bringing it into the workplace. And what he said was, the big question that people need to try and answer is, are people better off for having come in contact with you? Right? And so what you're doing and what we're trying to do is add value to people's lives.
Yes, before it's too late. I think that's, as I just crested my 50th birthday and all these meaningful things were happening that particular week. And I think that sense of grasping this one wild and precious life before it is too late, before you're looking back on a 35-year career of being beleaguered and exhausted every minute of your life and not really taking weekends and not really taking vacations. That's where my excitement is. If I know that some dad who is in the middle of WhiteSpace training at work is going to maybe have a moment where he's pushing a swing in the park and he's going to put his phone away while he's pushing the swing, that's my nirvana, and that's that's where I get goosebumps, is using all of the professional skills that we teach to then extrapolate the work and bring it home and bring it on vacation and bring it into time to think about charitable actions and all the things that I think go beyond work. That's really what drives the undercurrent of all of the work that we do.
Well, that's a beautiful message. I so appreciate it. And thank you for taking the time to talk to us today.
It was really fun.
My pleasure.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Nice to meet you too. We hope you enjoyed this conversation, and we encourage you to learn more about servant leadership and the services of the Servant Leadership Institute by visiting our website at www.servantleadershipinstitute.com. We're excited to announce the release of our latest publication, The Servant Leadership Journal, an 18-week journey to transform you and your organization, written by our founder and CEO, Art Barter. The book is available now on Amazon or our website. And save the date for our 2018 Servant Leadership Conference, February 19th and 20th in San Diego, California. Thanks for listening and allowing us to add value to your day.